What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review the new movie Him, a movie which is being described as a supernatural, psychological, sports horror film. I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but basically it's a football movie and it's a horror movie colliding together, and I won't bury my opinion deep into the video. This is one of the dumbest movies I've had the privilege of seeing in a long time, but not nearly as dumb as I was for going to see it with high expectations, because I saw the trailer. I was like, oh, Jordan Peele produced this. He didn't direct it, but he produced it. And I was kind of taken in by the style, and I thought that Marlon Wayans was looking like he was really intense in the trailer. And I just somehow talked myself into thinking this is going to be this like balls to the wall, really extreme, really disturbing movie about the dark side of sports with like performance-enhancing drugs and ambition and the trappings of wealth. And maybe it's got some hidden horror qualities that aren't immediately apparent on the surface. And I would say for like the first 5 or 10 minutes of the movie, the more grounded part of the movie, I was invested, and I did think it was going to go to an interesting place. But as soon as the main character, Cameron Cade, goes off to this training camp, well, then the wheels very rapidly flew off the cart. But here's the official description of the movie from the pages of Wikipedia. Cameron Cade was destined for football glory until an attack by an obsessed fan threatened to end his career before it began. Just when hope fades, his idol, legendary quarterback Isaiah White, invites him to train in his private compound, but what starts as the opportunity of a lifetime soon twists into something far more dangerous as Cam discovers the true cost of chasing greatness.
What am I willing to sacrifice?
But I should also add that in addition to Marlon Wayans, the movie stars Tyreek Withers as Cameron Cade, and I first saw him in I Know What You Did Last Summer. Earlier this summer, talented actor, but he's had some bad luck when it comes to his choice of material. But the movie also stars the very lovely Julia Fox, as well as Jim Jeffries, the comedian. And I won't go into any spoilers yet. I'll give you a verbal warning as well as a time code below when I do. But I think in broad strokes, this movie's his real flaw is that it's kind of caught in this no man's land where it's not a good enough sports movie to appeal to the sports crowd, nor is it a good enough horror movie to appeal to the horror fans. So you're just left wondering, like, well, who is this movie for? But I should also acknowledge before I get any deeper into the video, I know less than nothing about football, apart from 3 summers of flag football at the sports camp that I went to when I was 12, 13, and 14. And here's a picture of me from that era. Would you pick this kid to be on your football team? I mean, I like to proudly proclaim that I am maybe the least talented or least athletic person ever to step onto a football field. And I grew up in an environment where everybody loved high school football, college football. Like, you know, all my brothers, all my friends, all my family members, everybody I've ever known my entire life loves football, but I'm the weirdo that likes, you know, books and movies and video games and that sort of thing. And that's just the way I came out of the womb, and I make no apologies for it. But I have seen a lot of really good football movies, like North Dallas 40. Is a really good football movie. What are some of the other ones? I tend not to like the more kind of sentimental, inspirational ones. Although I did enjoy the show Friday Night Lights. Like most people, think that was the part of the success of that show, is that it appealed to anybody, irrespective of their interest in the sport. And while in general I try to avoid the football movies that get a little bit too sad and weepy or try too hard to be inspirational, there's one big exception to that, and that would be Brian's Song, starring James Caan and Billy D. Williams. That movie, I don't care how tough and rugged and just hardcore you are, if you watch Brian's Song, you're going to be just Niagara Falls by the end. It will reduce the strongest man to just a blubbering mess.
I love Brian Piccolo. And I'd like all of you to love him too.
But I tend to like the football movies that really get into the kind of the extreme, over-the-top lifestyles of the players. Movies like Semi-Tough with Burt Reynolds and Chris Christopherson. I already mentioned North Dallas 40, but that movie's just so vulgar and hilarious at times that I just can't help but fall under its spell.
Genuine sports personality. A legendary folk hero.
Folk hero, have some dextrine.
Don't mind if I do.
Little Combazine.
All right.
Would you like codeine?
Does the shark shit in the sea? Come on, give me some of this.
Or even movies like Varsity Blues. Like Varsity Blues was total trash, but it's just a deliriously entertaining movie with, like, you know, strippers and hell raising and people getting wasted. So going into this new movie Him, I kind of foolishly believed that it was going to take all the dark side of football, but basically kind of sprinkle champagne and cocaine over all of it and really magnify everything, whether it's performance enhancing drugs or the women that come after you, or, like, you know, deals with the devil that you have to make with franchises or whatever the case might be. And I thought it was just going to be this, like, electrifying, just intoxicating, over-the-top experience. Well, the movie is over the top, but it's over the top in the sense that it takes itself so seriously and it's so earnest, but at the same time it's so stupid. You basically find yourself involuntarily wanting to crack up at the movie throughout the last half of it. And there were several times where I kind of like had to put my fist over my mouth to choke back laughter because I didn't know if that would annoy the audience or not. But over the course of this movie, which is basically a week in the life of an athlete who's about to sign a big contract, the movie just gets progressively dumber and more idiotic. And I kept thinking to myself throughout this movie, it is an absolute tragedy that Marlon Wayans is in this movie as opposed to a comedy making fun of it after the fact, because Marlon Wayans is one of the funniest guys alive. I love the scary movies, and I like him when he's in more dramatic work as well. Movies like Requiem for a Dream. He can do comedy, he can do tragedy, he can do it all. He's an incredibly talented guy. But I think in the absence of great dialogue or in the absence of great scenes, they basically put the entire burden of the movie on his shoulders and just said, just scream and rage and just try to elevate the movie with intensity in the absence of actual meaty drama or in the absence of legit scares. Because this movie, it's being described as an R-rated horror movie. It's not scary at all.
So what are you willing to sacrifice?
There are a few scenes where the movie either tries to deliver some jump scares or some really disturbing qualities, either through psychotic fans or psychotic coaches, psychotic doctors. Everybody's acting psycho in this movie. But it just comes across as self-parody, where once again, the only thing more stupid than the movie is myself for believing this movie actually might be entertaining on any level. So apart from producer Jordan Peele, you might be asking yourself, who is responsible for this monstrosity? Well, it was written by Skip Bronke, Zach Ackers, Justin Tipping, and Justin Tipping also had the honor of directing this giant pile of shit. And Justin Tipping directed a movie called Kicks back in 2016, which I've not seen, and he's directed a lot of television. But if I were looking at the finished product from Jordan Peele's perspective, I would have demanded that my name be removed from the movie. And they're advertising his name front and center in all the marketing and all the advertising, trying to make you think this is the fourth movie directed by Jordan Peele. But Jordan Peele at this point still is one of the most bankable names within the horror genre, where he's delivered 3 original movies not based on pre-existing IP. So I applaud him for that, for writing original screenplays and going off and making his movies. Even if his movies, he has a bad problem right now where the budgets keep going up, but the box office keeps going down, which at a certain point, there'll be like an intersection where that could be ruinous to his career. But for the time being, Jordan Peele remains a very bankable director. But you don't want your name to be affiliated with or associated with movies that are going to be roundly rejected and ridiculed. Once again, Marlon Wayans and his brother should have gotten together a few months after this movie and written a movie making fun of sports movies. Because I don't know if there's ever been a really good comedy making fun of the world of sports, or a movie like Scary Movie making fun of horror movies, but making fun of instead like all the kind of inspirational tropes that most sports movies employ. But I think what's going to invite a lot of ridicule and a lot of mockery and a lot of finger pointing at this movie in the coming weeks is that it takes itself so goddamn seriously without ever actually delivering anything that can be taken seriously. Like there's no scene where oh my God, like that, what a crushing injury, or like, oh my God, like that strip club was amazing. Those girls were so fucking hot. Like there's no scene where you're stunned into silence by just the opulence and the decadence and just the wealth and splendor on display. It comes across a little bit like a child's idea of what football might be like if they don't know that much about the world of football, nor have they ever seen any good horror movies, because what it's leading toward, what it's trying to be, and I don't know if the filmmakers involved have ever seen this or not, it wants to be the Wicker Man. It wants to have the big, crazy, like folk horror reveal at the end where you're like, where you're just left devastated in your seat, unable to move, where you just never fully recover, and then you watch the movie again and realize, oh, it's one of your favorite movies of all time. And it's trying really hard to have that big, like Christopher Lee style reveal that we saw in The Wicker Man. I mean, I don't want to reveal the ending of The Wicker Man, but it's one of the best folk horror movies ever made, and it's not scary at all until like the last 5 minutes. But then it's so scary in the last 5 minutes that you never fully recover. Him is trying to replicate that as this star, this prospect, is leading up to the moment of whether or not he's going to sign with his team. And the climax of this movie, I mean, people are going to be rolling on the floor. They're going to be laughing so hard. Like when the violence starts to unfold and people are just, through their own spastic actions or their own stupidity, and like inflicting self-harm and injuries on themselves. And as this, anyway, I guess I'm getting into spoiler territory, such as just give you a warning. 3, 2, 1, I'm going to talk about this idiotic ending at the end of the movie. Because as it turns out, this very prestigious football franchise that the character of Cameron Cade is trying to become the new quarterback for, they've been indulging in a series of like ritualistic sacrifices over the years where they preserve the blood of their star quarterback and start like injecting and infusing that blood into the next prospect who's coming along so that they'll always remain dominant. But you have a lot of people dressing up in these kind of outlandish outfits with like tomahawks and weapons, and all these old men that's supposed to represent like these corrupt, wealthy, white elitists. And they're basically like forcing you to sacrifice what came before, sacrifice your own life and family, sign in blood on the dotted line, and devote your entire life to the program until you outlive your usefulness and the next person can come along. And the character played by Tyreek Withers, he just decides to go like on a murderous rampage and starts using all their weapons to chop them up. Meanwhile, like Julia Fox and other people, they're running around in panic, like falling on knives and acting like idiots. It's one of the dumbest things I've ever had the privilege of watching, and I've seen some doozies in my time. I've been watching movies religiously for, 42, 43 years. Whenever I started watching movies as a young kid, I've seen some moronic movies in my day. But him is definitely the most embarrassing spectacle that I've seen unfold in quite some time. Once again, just because it takes itself so goddamn seriously. It's so sincere and it's so earnest, and it thinks it's just like the ultimate kind of like edgelord story. But if you're going to be an edgelord and if you're going to go to the dark side, well, then you better deliver some graphic horror, some really disturbing gore, some crazy sexuality. I mean, one of the most unforgiving flaws of this movie is that Julia Fox and all of her slutty friends at one point decide to entertain this character of Cameron Cade. It's the most chaste, tame scene you can ever possibly imagine. And Julia Fox used to work as like an S&M. It's like in her interview, she talks about how in high school she would make extra cash by like tying guys up and whipping them and doing all sorts of weird, kinky shit to them and that sort of thing. She has it in her to go there if you invite her to do so. But it's like if I'm a star college quarterback and I'm on the cusp of becoming a superstar within the NFL, I expect that party scene to be like something out of Caligula. It better just be like eyes wide shut. It needs to be like giant boobs and booty as far as the eye can see, with people covered in baby lotion, like snorting cocaine out of cleavage and people's butt cheeks. It needs to be filthy and depraved and disgusting. But this big party scene that unfolds in this movie, it's a little bit like going to a gentleman's club where the girls actually don't take their clothes off and no booze is served, and you're like, why are we here? Like, what are we paying for all these like overpriced glasses of apple juice for? Like, what the fuck are we doing here? And I felt the exact same way while watching him. And all the training sequences and drilling sequences and physical therapy sequences, they all have the exact same problem, where from the tone and the vibe of the movie, you can tell they think they're showing you some really heavy shit that's just going to leave you just slack-jawed. But they're the exact opposite, where it's like, I've seen more hardcore training sequences in just kind of run-of-the-mill, everyday football movies, like the Oliver Stone film, Any Given Sunday, when they show guys like after a game, like when they're got like IVs into their arm and they're trying to take a dump while like the physical therapist is working with them at the same time, where it's kind of grotesque and there's a lot of you're getting immersed in a lot of biological detail. And Any Given Sunday is not even trying to be that hardcore. It's just trying to be an intense view of the NFL, and it's a pretty entertaining movie. I don't even like football, and I saw Any Given Sunday I think 3 times in the theater. Like, that movie ultimately was a successful football movie. Him doesn't come anywhere close to being as good as a movie like Any Given Sunday. When a movie is accidentally or unintentionally more extreme than your so-called extreme psychological horror movie, you know you got some problems. And I have no proof to back up this assertion, but I suspect that on some level, a lot of the people making this movie have a certain degree of condescension toward or contempt for the target audience for this movie. Basically, meatheads who they think won't know the difference between a good horror movie and a bad horror movie, or a good sports movie and a bad sports movie. And I feel like the moment people feel like they're being talked down to, I don't care how much of a dumbass they are, they will resent it and they will eat your movie alive. And so I hope that some of the meatheads of the world go see this movie thinking they're going to see a kick-ass football movie with some legit scares, and they're just going to turn on it in the most vicious fashion possible. Because I don't. Once again, I think this movie, as I said at the beginning of my video, it is caught in that dead zone where it's not a strong enough movie in any one category to appeal to any demographic or fan base. Horror fans are going to be let down. Sports fans are going to be let down. People who enjoy the dark side of entertainment, they're going to be let down, because this movie feels like it's got its foot on the brakes every step of the way, where no matter what it's trying to do, it's kind of a limp, half-assed version of that. And so that's all I've got to say, I think, about this movie, Him. And I wish I had some really great phrase from football to describe the shortcomings of the movie. I mean, obviously, I can use phrases like fumble or turnover or whatever the case may be. That much I remember from my brief shining moment playing flag football as a little kid. But I'm sure there's some expressions that coaches use or offensive coordinators use when they're trying to tell their players just how badly they blew it. But I will leave it to the people who know a lot more about the sport of football to come up with those phrases. And I'm seeing here on Wikipedia that this movie was made for $27 million. I worry they're about to lose each and every single dollar that was invested in this movie. And ordinarily, I'm banging the drum for this category of films. Movies with a low enough budget where they can take some risks, but a big enough budget where you can afford a few stars and some good production value. I'm a big fan of R-rated entertainment. I'm a big fan of everything on paper that this movie was supposed to be. I think maybe there would have been a good movie or a better movie to be made if they had adhered to the kind of the style and tone of like the first 5 or 10 minutes, where you're seeing a college superstar who has a horrible head injury, where he's surrounded by a million people constantly giving him advice and input, and they're like, and oftentimes that advice is terrible. Like, oh, you need a shiny haircut before you go on for this interview, and then accidentally buzzing over like the staples in his head and things like that. I was like, ugh, that's kind of gnarly. And I think if they tried to make a more grounded movie about the extreme side of football, that might have worked. Or they should have just gone full batshit crazy and gone all in on like the wildest, craziest horror movie you've ever seen. And it just doesn't have anything to offer. And I like a lot of these actors, and I want nothing but the best for them. But like I said before, Marlon Wayans, he should have passed on this movie and instead signed up with his family to make a movie making fun of it after the fact. That's the movie that I want to see. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Am I being too harsh? I haven't read a single review nor seen a single reaction, so who knows? Maybe I'm the only person who hates this movie, or who knows? Maybe I'm part of a chorus that it's criticizing it. I really have no idea. But often I feel like it's kind of dangerous to read too many reviews before you see a movie and review it yourself, because you end up kind of, like joining the herd or borrowing the phrases or whatever. So this is my immediate, cold, fresh reaction for him coming right out of the theater, and I appreciate you listening to me rant about its shortcomings for a few short minutes. But I hope everybody has a great weekend at the movies. Remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.